Sukui Garabore, and welcome to Cassus Café. This week, I am joined by Kleina.
Hello.
And Captain.
Hello.
And Ty Koth, he's finally back. This week, we are going to be talking about episode 6 of Mandalorian Season 3. What was that?
I don't even know.
So yeah, I mean, I feel really guilty and weird because I simultaneously don't think it's good and really like it.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I will admit there are things that I liked about the episode, but I have a lot of issues with it.
Yeah, like again, for like pure technical, I understand why people think it's not strong because it's kind of corny and cheesy, but like, man, is it fun in certain places just for like a classic cheesy Star Wars original trilogy sort of perspective.
Yeah, there's definitely moments where I was like, I'm enjoying myself, and then I get like, oh, what is this? It was definitely a roller coaster of emotions for me.
If you're a fan of like the old, like, you know, original trilogy, more cheesiness to it, like very corny, then I think you're gonna get more out of it. But if you enjoy the serious Star Wars takes, the darker, then yeah, I think it's not at all in line with that.
Oh yeah, I have no problem having like a light-hearted episode. I just don't think it was executed well.
This episode gave me major like Disney Marvel vibes, where like parts of it with the intercom and that little tram system, all the scenes with the Lizzo and Jack Black character, I don't even know what their real names are, they all reminded me of like Thor Ragnarok with all the bright colors and crazy super high class ridiculous people
And the lighting.
Yeah.
Overall.
Yeah, I can definitely feel that.
and not necessarily in a good way, because I didn't really like those.
The transports reminded me, I thought it was direct inspiration from Logan's Run, the 70s sci-fi film. Looked exactly like that.
No,
Yeah.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, okay. It's a pillar of sci-fi, so we need to watch it.
Without going into details, it felt like an episode of She-Hulk when they brought in, the celebrities, and I'm going, wait, I don't have a problem bringing celebrities in if you do it well.
I do. This is one of the only points I wrote down, so let me crack open my notes here. When I see a movie star in Star Wars, it takes me out of it completely. I'm used to Star Wars making movie stars, not the other way around. You shouldn't have to put movie stars into Star Wars for people to watch it.
All right, I'm going to take this one step further. I don't think there should be movie stars in general.
Well, fair, but there are. So,
But Pedro is a movie star.
well, that's the thing. They're not. He wasn't a A-list big blockbuster movie guy. He was in different TV shows that he's popular for, but he's only really been in TV shows. He was in Game of Thrones.
He's a B-list actor. He doesn't
To be
count.
fair,
He was in
Lizzo's
Game-
not a movie star at all.
Yeah,
She's a
Lizzo's
singer.
not a movie star, but she's very popular. She's a very popular Gen Z musician that almost everyone in pop culture, like not pop culture, but mainstream knows.
For one.
And that's the only reason I know her, because she's that popular. She permeates through everything.
I guess it kind of depends, because Pedro Pascal, by the time he was in Star Wars, already seemed like so massive to me. He just seems like huge. And then even Adam Driver seemed so big before he's in Force Awakens. So
See,
I guess,
I'd never heard of Adam Driver before that. So
Oh.
none of
and
the
Oscar Isaac seemed like was just so massive to me too.
I did know Oscar Isaac. He's the only actor that was cast in the sequel trilogy that I was like, it was kind of up there for me, like pushing it. But he still wasn't, like, I only knew him from niche movies, so I didn't think of it too bad. It's kind of like how I think of Pedro, like he's just from other shows and more niche shows that I've kind of seen. I've seen Game of Thrones, but that's the only show he's in that I've seen. So he wasn't that bad. And when it comes to Christopher Lloyd, he's the only character in this episode I did not have a real problem with, really, until the very end, which we'll get to. But like his acting, him being in the show, didn't take me out of it, because that kind of sci-fi. He's been in that kind of sci-fi genre already, so it just kind of was a easy fit for me to believe that, and he did a good job.
And to be fair, he's an actor, whereas Jack Black, yes, is an actor, but he's more of a comedian, in my opinion.
Yeah,
than
comedian
an
musician,
actor.
but
I don't know. He's
I mean,
pretty good.
he's pretty good. Jack Black is pretty good. He was too much Jack Black in this show, which took me completely out of it. As soon as I saw him,
he had a really cool.
He's
beard.
like, "Come in," and I knew exactly who it was as soon as you heard him. I didn't even see him; you hear him first. I knew exactly who it was, and I just belted out laughing.
Oh, I did too.
As soon as I heard him,
hard.
but it wasn't a good laugh. It took me completely out of it.
Mine was a good laugh.
I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that." I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Jack Black is in here.
We had the exact same reaction to that scene, just opposite outcomes.
Yeah, opposite background to it. Yeah, opposite contexts.
Overall, I would agree that, like, if possible, I would rather no stars be in it at all and brand new people. I always
Exactly.
that. So I'm always into that idea, but I can't help it that I love me some Jack Black.
I guess I'm on the other end of the table here. I don't think that's fair to be like, oh, you're famous, you can't be in Star Wars. That's like a form of racism to me, and I'm absolutely opposed to that. That said, I do feel like you should be capable of the role and bring the role to justice. So Christopher Lloyd, I didn't realize it was Christopher Lloyd at first, which I think shows to how well he was playing the character of who he was playing.
Marty,
it really wasn't till the end that I was like, wait a minute, is that Doc from Back to the Future?
Probably because he just looked older than the last time you saw him.
A lot older. I did not recognize him.
He wasn't playing as a character he's always played in Star Wars, right? Versus Jack Black and whoever this Lizzo woman was. They stuck out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
This is what I meant by, like, it felt like a She-Hulk episode.
You do know who Lizzo is, though, right?
And I do not care.
You do? Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't care. My personal stance is just because you're famous means we should automatically bar you from Star Wars. I think it just needs to be whatever the role is. They really need to do a proper job of, like, casting. And if it happens to be an A-list or A+, I don't know, whatever the term is, actor that's best for the job, then so be it, versus you have to be a nobody, right? Granted, we've had some pretty amazing stories from the original movies, bringing no names into the spotlight and being amazing actors. But just because you're an established actor, it doesn't mean that you should be barred from being in Star Wars. I think that's a very horrible way of doing things.
If there is one critique, or if there's like a common critique among all of Star Wars that everyone unanimously kind of agrees on, it's that overall, though, acting isn't its strongest.
I mean,
the original trilogy is made fun of like crazy for that. Even at the time, it's kind of intentionally poor acting.
I don't know. It's point of comparison, I guess, but I think the biggest point for me is consistency. That's all I care about, So, in this case, this episode was anything but of consistent.
So, to connect this conversation with the first scene of the show, when I first saw or heard the captain lady that was inside that tank, the Corrin captain, I was like, oh, I've heard that voice before. I know I've heard that voice. She was also a Cathar in Doctor Who. One of the cat doctor people. Anyway.
Nobody likes the first scene, the love reveal between...
I like
God,
it. It just doesn't... It's pointless. There is literally no point to it. They already reintroduced these characters to us in the recap at the beginning. They didn't need to introduce us again.
Yeah, now you point that out, it does seem kind of... it's just a visual version of, hey, this is what's going on, that we already told you. They're mercenaries now. And this is just tippet of it.
Because all of that was already like basically told to us later on in the episode by the Jack Black and Lizzo characters. But like, unless these two Calamari and Corrin characters show up later, there is no point to this scene.
Highly doubt it. This is just a side little thing.
It's so short though.
Yeah.
It's not like you're taking 40 minutes on a thing. You're just like a little fun little world building thing.
Yeah, I don't mind a 2-minute quip versus a 40-minute quip.
Yeah, so when I first watched this episode, I knew before that I was spoiled slightly again that the episode wasn't great this week. So when I booted up, I'm like, oh great, what's wrong? And when this scene came up, I'm like, oh, that's cringe, but if that's the worst of it, then I can, forgive it. And then the rest of the episode happened, and I was like, oh no. Oh.
I instantly kind of thought of that cringe quest in Knights of the Old Republic when you reunite the lovers dating under the parents of Queen. And that was like so corny and funny, but I like loved that.
Yeah.
I thought it was really weird when they're like kind of kissing, kind of not, and like her tentacles are like touching his face while they're hugging, kissing, whatever. It was kind of creepy, kind of cute.
It was creepy and cringy. That's what it was to me.
I love that little scene. I think it's quirky and dumb and weird in the best ways, but I get it if somebody isn't into. Again, it's kind of dumb.
Ever since I found love is more cute.
Ever since I found love is more cringe.
Yeah, it's also cringe, but it's cute.
I haven't found love, and this was cringe, but I don't know how.
I found love and I liked it. This is how we're gonna rate everything.
Yeah. So, all right. So going into the next scene where they're flying into the planet. This is an example of the first point of non-actor problems I have.
Before you even get to that,
Yeah.
I just want to highlight Bo's already flying without her helmet again.
Yeah.
Which kind of reinforces the point where she kept it on. I was like, that's so out of character for you.
Yeah.
And how that was just plot-driven convenience. And now it's like, oh, I don't have to wear it anymore.
She didn't wear a helmet this entire episode.
My question about her with the helmet is, why bother even having a helmet? Like, helmets are supposed to protect you, but if you're not even going to bring it along with, there's no point to even having one.
So you're skipping ahead to a point where I also had an issue.
Already though, like seeing someone without a helmet, like a main character, has already connected. Like I'm way more connected to her already than I ever have been in just a few episodes, only because of that. And I understand the plot of keeping the helmet on. I do understand it, but I can't help that I am much more emotionally invested in her already.
I feel connected to Din in this episode.
Which, by the way, I was kind of shocked to see him tagging along.
Yeah, okay, so that gets into my first point. This scene and through this entire episode really is the worst offender of an episode feeling both really rushed and really slow. First off, she's already going to the planet where her Mandalorian people are. I'm like, okay, how does she already know where they're at? Why is Din there?
Yeah.
Didn't he say at the end of the last one he was gonna come with her?
No, there's nothing.
Nope.
She said Bo's gonna go off and find Mandalorians, and then it ends with a very emotional close-up of Bo, and then it goes to the scene about Gideon escaping. And that's it. Now, Din's with her for no apparent reason. It feels like we've skipped something. There's some information we're missing as to why he's with her and why she already knows where her people are.
I mean, he doesn't really have anything else to do.
When she saved him, he said, "I'm forever in your debt." Does that mean he has to follow her now everywhere because he basically would have been dead otherwise?
I mean, what's the situation in which he wouldn't follow her?
It's not a life debt, though.
Yeah,
I mean, is this like another Jar Jar Binks where like, oh, you saved me, I gotta follow you now?
There is a situation because unless it's otherwise explained, she's the only one that the armorer has praised and has sent off on this mission as of last episode. So for him to join her just out of the random, I mean, she's got to, I guess, have somebody to tag along, but why wouldn't she have more people tag along? Why just him? Why not somebody else?
Plot device.
Why anyone?
I will say that to just have them together though, I like the dynamic of both of them back and forth rather than more Mandalorians. Not as far as plot convenience, but just, I just enjoy them together more than the rest of them.
I do enjoy the connection between Bo and Jin much better.
I'm not arguing that. My issue isn't that they're together. It's just the reason.
I have to agree, because when I watched this episode and it panned to a shot of him being there, I was like, oh, well, why is he there? You know, I wasn't expecting that.
It's just an interesting, like I said, it feels like we've skipped some information. Like, why is he with her? How does she know that her people are there?
Is he like, well, I'm bored, I don't get anything else to do, can I tag along? I mean, you also have a bigger ship, by the way. I kind of miss having my Razor Crest. Can I come along with you?
Yeah, he doesn't even have his ship anymore. He's not using his.
Yeah. I mean, he's got his N1, but like, that's a single fighter.
I really just don't know like what else he would do normally, like on the planet. He just like doesn't have anything to do, so it just makes sense that he would go.
He could have stayed behind and helped the other Mandalorians, along with Grief Karga, you know,
rebuild,
help the Mandalorians set up and kind of get integrated on Navarro. There could be something along the lines that they could explore there, but no, we skip all that, and that's why if the beginning of this feels rushed.
I'd rather them cut out the love scene. That was a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
They had more prepped into this episode.
Yeah.
Like maybe them getting ready on her ship and like preparing to fly off, and him being like, "Well, I'm coming with you," and then
the time we spent on the beginning scene with the two lovebirds could have been used to explore why Din's with her and where they're going and how she finds out they're over here.
This reminds me of an issue that I think the Rebels TV show suffered from. Because the show seems to be centered around Ezra, he has to be on every single mission. So somebody took the time to summarize the whole season, and he was like, hey, anytime somebody was sent to go somewhere, whether it be Sabine or any of the other main characters, it was Ezra going, hey, I'm coming with you. And they're like, no, you don't have to be here. You can't be here. And then he just stows away and goes anyway.
That's true. That's definitely a thing that.
So he's literally in every story arc, and it's just like, oh man, no wonder why the show is not as good as Clone Wars in comparison, because Clone Wars is capable of going to different characters and doing.
Okay, I don't know if I'd go that far, but
I wouldn't either.
but I agree with the issue.
I feel like Clone Wars did a better job at telling stories that didn't have to drag a certain character into everything. Is what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, I would agree with
Versus that. Rebels felt like they did that, and I felt like it really degraded the storytelling as a result.
I don't know. I feel like Ahsoka was pretty dragged into everything, but that's just me.
So I wanted to make a comment about the overall aesthetic. I will say, when I first saw it, my first thought was futuristic mankind, basically. That like I was thinking of Epcot and like classic sci-fi future when I looked at it, because I was like, the glass dome, the space routes, and all the flora with the water. I was like, yeah, this screams like futuristic Earth in a way.
I thought it was gonna be like a Mandalorian flashback of Mandalore, like a flashback of Mandalore, because the same dome cities. Yeah, I mean,
everything for me just thought Logan's Run the whole time.
I can see where you get that thought. I've never seen
because like very much the way the tubes transit worked are just. I mean, I just know they're so exact that like it was a really big inspiration. There's no way it could be anything else.
I could definitely see where you're coming from.
And we haven't gotten a design like this, to my knowledge, yet on camera or in animation. I haven't seen kind of that real white, futuristic, white platinum silvered colored planet.
No, I don't think I can think of anything either. But I did like it. This is one of the things I did like, was the overall aesthetic. It really grabbed me, and I enjoyed it.
We haven't gotten something for a while where it's just like new planet, explore it, see a little bit of the culture. There was some of that in obviously episode 2, but like for the most part, it's like in dark areas all the time.
And it's not a desert planet.
Yeah, it's not like the same type of terrain, and so that's really nice to just your favorite characters going in to explore a new planet, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, it's probably the reason why I liked Rogue One. It was we kind of had this like Caribbean style planet.
Yeah.
It was Scarif, yeah, and I was like, oh, this is different. Oh, this is so cool. Versus Star Wars tropes of like seeming always to land on a desert planet somewhere, and it's like, how many desert planets are in the solar system?
Yeah. So they get in the tram really cool lighting in the tram.
Well, she makes a comment about like droids, and I was like, what if there's no one here? I was immediately getting the vibe of like, what if these droids killed everyone, and now it's like there's only droids here, and like almost like you go into like an abandoned city, and the only thing left is the robots or something like that. I was kind of wondering if that's what this was going to start turning into.
That could have been kind of neat.
Because they're like, oh, Imperial droids on an independent world? Oh, that's why I was like, oh, what are they trying to suggest here? Of course, as they're getting into the pod, by the way, I really noticed something. Not only is Bo being a complete idiot, and even going like, hey, these droids here, these Imperial droids, I'm still going to go without my helmet, but I'd like to bring my jetpack. And then Mando over here is like, you know what? Forgo the jetpack. I'll bring a helmet.
Well, she left her helmet on the ship. She couldn't go back for it.
Yeah. It was interesting to see them have to bring up their chain codes to get the pod to move, which kind of reminded me like of a hyperloop of some sort.
Yeah, for some reason I forgot about chain codes in this time.
I'm wondering if somebody's deciphered their chain codes yet.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna put that much work into it.
I don't care to put that much work into it. I know somebody else will, and I'll just see what they did.
Yeah.
But after they get that mission there, that they realize what they need to do for plot's sake. Do you like and enjoy that kind of like almost detective style plot that ensues at all?
But is it really a detective style, or is it more of a scavenger hunt for a child where it tells you to go to one place, and then that place tells you to go to the next place, and then that place tells you to go to the next place? There's not any detective work going on. It's just follow the path.
Well,
Yeah.
they have to interrogate the Ugnaughts, or not interrogate, but question them
What?
and question
Well,
them. And
The problem is, I think this is definitely a dumbed down version of like a traditional, NCIS style detective thing. It was neat when I first watched it. I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. A Star Wars NCIS, I can get behind that.
Yeah.
But on subsequent views, it seemed very simplistic.
It was not executed well.
Yeah.
It could have been so much better.
the level of plot felt a little bit like season 1 or Clone Wars or season 1 Rebels, like kind of that type of kiddie sort of plot.
This is why I have such an issue with having that first scene in here. They could have used that time to make this detective story more complex and interesting rather than this dumbed down version of what we got.
You could also use that time to showcase some of the issues that were going on in the city before we even got here.
I do kind of like them discovering, though, like we're the viewer through them and kind of discovering what's happening through their...
Well, I mean, they just show us on a security cam. So
Yeah.
when they were talking about hiring them to do this, they're like, well, why don't you do this? And they're like, oh, we can't have weapons inside the city. They're like, well, you let us in. And we're like, well, that's because of our something about religion. And
That's
you're like,
because you're in a cult.
That's because, I mean,
I'm
they don't want to.
well, they're like, oh, you're Mandalorian, and weapons are part of your religion. And I was like, okay, that's a fun quirk calling back to a previous season or previous episode. So I kind of got a chuckle out of that. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, all right, you got me there.
Nah,
It's like over-tolerance.
it was just a weird situation I didn't fully understand because they let them in. They're apparently not supposed to have weapons inside the city, but they do. Like, their police don't even have weapons, but they're allowing them to. And then the Mandalorians that they have already contracted out to protect them, they can't get them to come and figure this out?
Because something with their laws, they said that the people that they hire to protect their planet isn't allowed within the domed city. So
Yes,
they
they
have
did
to
state
protect them
that.
from the outside, from outside predators, not
Yeah.
policing the citizens.
And I guess they did explain as a little bit of a workaround where they're not
It's a
paying them to
loophole.
do it.
That was
it's
the
like
whole point.
Yeah, they're not paying them to do it. They're like doing it as a charity or service so that they'll recognize them as a sovereign system kind of thing.
That seems like a pretty common political thing to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens in real life.
I guess I'll give it a pass.
The whole idea of this city just makes me think of Utopia, where they want everything to be perfect. Humans don't have to work. Everyone has tolerance and everyone's supposed to be happy and hunky-dory. But then there's this other side where everything is falling apart, kind of. And I really hate it.
It's
I
actually
hate this society.
It's actually kind of an interesting critique on the modern liberal mindset of what they think the world should be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they put all the work on the droids and think of them as like second-class citizens and don't care about them at all.
Well, if they're not sentient, it's not a big deal.
Or are they
That's the thing
sentient,
about
though?
Star Wars. They're like, are the droids sentient or not, right?
It's a weird mix of values going on in this episode.
I will say, when they were like, hey, if you help us out, we'll formally recognize Mandalore back into your system. And I like how Mando just kind of looks at Bo and just kind of does that like thing with his head to be like, that's kind of a, enticing offer. Again, going back to, I like when they have their helmets on. I think their body language is superb when they are wearing full body armor. So
I like that he's getting a little more fun in general. Like he's,
well, it's not him that's driving all this. It's not his issue, right?
right.
He's like, I returned the child, and the child came back to me. And so
Yeah, he doesn't feel so heavy all the time. Where they're like, "Do you want to do this?" And he's like, "Yeah, you had me a battle droid."
right.
Honestly, shocked that he left Grogu with her and he didn't come with at all. Like that's a lot of trust you put into someone you just met.
He's just getting more trusting in general.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think it's a cop-out because they weren't originally going to have Grogu in the show, and they have to just write some way of him.
Oh yeah, I mean that's for sure.
But yeah, so what you were saying about, I'm at the point where he says, you had me at battle droids, and I'm like, okay. Now, I must say, I always enjoy seeing Star Wars bring things back from previous eras. Like, so in this case, they found a way to create a story where, separatist droids are a component of the story, right? I think that was kind of clever.
Yeah, they've done it a few times, but I think it's interesting because there were so many droids that like one excuse wasn't enough. So it's nice to see where different types of places that they stash these things or that they used them.
Or where they end up, right? They don't all end up in the same place. Like,
because there was one in Rebels where they go to like a planet full of them at some point.
There was a crashed ship that was out of range and never received the shutdown command.
Yeah, stuff like that. So all of these little pieces, like you start to build a bigger picture. Okay, this is kind of what happens to an army after it's done.
Right. Kind of also like what happens to the clones, and that's being explored in the Bad Batch show. Yeah. So yeah, we get to see Christopher Lloyd. They're in the command center, so to speak.
Reminded me of Jurassic World.
Yeah, it was very Ender's Game 2 or something.
I thought it was funny that these 5 are like the only humans that have jobs in this society.
I mean, that is true. I was thinking about that myself.
I think that's why he did what he did.
Well, no, there was a whole different.
He didn't want a job anymore.
But if you think about it, the amount of jobs that are required to run this from a human perspective are very little.
All automated of sorts, automated transports, automated. Yeah.
A lot of the things are automated. Yep. It also shows that if this is the society you want, you should probably be in IT. Make sure you have a job still.
Yeah, next scene is Ugnaughts, yeah.
I like the Ugnaught scene a lot. I think it's fun. It's a nice callback to Quill, and he's so great that
I can agree with that.
He was such a great moment that I'm glad it didn't just end and he forgot about him entirely.
I did feel it weird that the Ugnaughts just like perked up as soon as he said Quill's name. Like, is Quill a celebrity or something? Like,
yeah,
I bet it's just like a standard name, or like a Muhammad would be to a maybe Middle Eastern or something. Like, or maybe he knows one of us.
I must say, seeing like a live action B2 and B1 battle droids down here, I was like, oh man, it's been a while.
Yeah, I don't remember the last time if there's another time live action before the movies.
Just brief flashbacks with Mando.
Right,
We've seen like a couple of seconds of frame of B2s that were up close. Like there was one B2 that pointed his blaster at him before Mando came and saved him. there was an ensuing firefight, but they were much further back in the shots.
Right.
To be this close up and it be like, oh, they're not shooting, you know. I can tell like somebody of him would probably be a little bit unsettled to see just a bunch of B2s, you know, that were the B2 was the particular model that almost killed them, right? And they're just there.
It's an interesting, because it's kind of insinuated that he's more getting over it, but he's very obviously still got some bias there, which is kind of interesting to see. He has no issue kicking those super batteries.
Right, but at the same time, he also recognizes that once you reprogram a droid, it's not the same droid, right? Look what happened with him in IG-11. He was like, oh, you know, it's an assassin droid. We can't trust it. And then, you know, that whole story arc concluded where it did. And so to him being like, okay, well, they're repurposing them, provided, you know, they don't have a relapse, so to speak. There's no reason why they can't have the same, you know, fate. And he does talk about how the Ugnaughts are notorious for their great craftsmanship and with droids and such. So he even says, like, we're not blaming you guys for this. You know, we're just trying to figure out what the issue is.
The Ugnaughts look pretty cool. Their prosthetics look really nice.
Yep.
I do have one issue with this scene. So they're like, the issue that the droids upstairs, that's not our problem. But then when they ask for like the data about the droids, he just has it immediately. And he's like, oh, here you go. It's on this data pad.
Oh yeah. I
Like,
forgot about that, yeah.
How did he get that information so fast if they before this very moment didn't care about the droids malfunctioning upstairs?
And how would they know where a future potential malfunction's gonna happen?
Yeah, that seems more
Right.
like something that the people in the previous scene would have the information for rather than
Yeah.
the Ugnaughts.
I would have to agree with that. I found it very odd that when they agreed to help, and he's like, all right, here's my data pad. And it's just like, wait, what? If I were to try to explain this away, maybe their craftsmanship, they take their craftsmanship so, you know, seriously that they start noticing them. Yeah, they don't care about what happens above, but they do care about their craftsmanship. They start like cataloging it and trying to figure out what the deal is, right? And maybe this has happened enough times, they're going, well, based off of what the history is, we think the next one will probably happen here, but we can't tell you why, you know?
But the fact that they wouldn't even listen to Bo-Katan when she came down to talk to them about that, I doubt they would listen to anyone else that's coming down to talk to them about the same exact thing.
Right.
Unless there's someone else on there that they respect, like they immediately respected Din for knowing that one guy.
Well, it depends on how they talk to him. And I mean, clearly there's got to be some sort of relationship here, right? I doubt they work down here for free. Obviously, these guys are like really hard workers and they must enjoy the craft. For them, maybe it's just ability. Like, yeah, we're third-class citizens, but they treat us well down here. We got a job. That job is always going to be in demand because this is a droid-run society. They're always going to need us. They'll never get rid of us because if they do, they'll just collapse, right? So maybe that's their kind of mentality. So, but I doubt they just be taken advantage of for free because I think they probably walk at that point, but who knows?
Yeah.
But yes, the whole data pad, like, okay, yeah, here you go. It felt really convenient. This goes to the part of, like, I like the detective work, you know, for Star Wars. It just was like, all right, you passed, like, the charisma check. Here you go. Here's what you were looking for. Bo, you didn't pass the charisma check. Mando, you passed the charisma check. Here you go. Here's the quest item.
Totally.
So, yeah, had an issue with that. So, yeah, so if we're at the dockyard, I was like, oh, battle droids reprogrammed, you know? And I was like, okay. And, you know, Bo makes a comment, I haven't seen these since the Clone Wars. I'm like, sounds about right. And of course, Mando's like, oh, I have. And, you know, he's a bit wary. Which I must admit, you know, it's one thing to see a deactivated B2. It's another to see a whole line of them, right?
Yeah.
I do have a question for you. Unless I'm missing something, what do you think Din meant by that he's seen them since the Clone Wars?
Yeah.
Well, even as a kid.
Well, as a kid, that's implied that he was saved during the Clone
which
Wars.
He was.
Yeah.
So that means he must have had another incident where he ran into them, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, possibly.
That's an interesting point, you know.
Wait a minute. If he was a kid,
Yeah, he was a kid when he got rescued by the Mandalorians.
Right,
And it was
no, I
during
know
the Clone
that.
Wars.
Oh, how long is it from Clone Wars to post? This is 7 years post Return of the Jedi, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's quite a bit of time.
Yep.
Is he like
Because
50?
the original trilogy takes 4 years. And then
Yeah.
it's 5 years after that, so it's really 8 years since Battle of Yavin.
Yeah.
Okay. It's
Or, no,
it's
sorry,
7
I'm doing
years
the math
since.
wrong.
It's been a really long freaking
It's
time.
9
Yeah.
years. 5 plus
He must
4
be
is
kind of old.
So it's getting up to 30 years since the Clone Wars, since
Mhm.
Order 66.
Oh, so he's like almost 40.
I gotta
And
give him
she's
some
ancient.
credit. He's moving pretty good.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
Well, so is
yeah,
Bo.
Dang.
So is
dang.
Bo for her
Especially,
age.
that makes the ending seem really impressive.
I mean, 40 in their universe may not necessarily be 40 in our universe, right? But so anyway, there's the droid B1 Foreman, which I was like, okay, that makes sense because a lot of pretty much, I think every droid commander that wasn't one of those specialist strategy droids was always a B1.
Except for this dumb tactical droids.
Right, yeah, tackle droids, yeah. So B1 being the foreman, yeah. And I must say, it was really neat to hear him talk and all that. It brought me back, and I really enjoyed it. Clumsiness that is the B1s, while, the B2s are marching.
I love them.
Yeah. It's great. It's great.
I'm really enjoying this, and and the way the B1 move, I was like, yep, the way they move seems kind of how I remember. I'm making a point of this now because in a moment I have some issues.
During the chase.
Yeah.
So the way the B2s are marching kind of reminds me how they did it in, the prequels, which is very slow and methodical.
Mhm.
And then the one he knocks over just loses it and punches back. And I was like, okay. And then he starts running, and I'm like, that's not how a B2 moves.
And Battlefront 2.
I saw a thing. I forgot who said it, but they're like, if the B2s ran like that, the clones would have lost the war.
Right? That's why I'm like, this looks like a dude in a mocap suit that they put a B2 model over. This does not, if you look at the way he runs, he's moving his arms like a human does. And I'm like, this is such a uncanny thing. This is not how droids moved, right? At all.
Yeah. It felt way too fluid and fast-paced, especially for B2. And B1s don't even
Yeah,
run.
so I was watching this and I was going, this is not a B2 at all. And like I said, the first time I was watching this, I'm like, this looks like a dude who was wearing a motion capture suit that was running through an obstacle course, and they went, okay, perfect. B2, copy, paste, done. And didn't even think about how these things were supposed to move, right? It looks so wrong. Like this whole time, this whole chasing. I mean, by the way, aesthetically around it, the whole streets and stuff kind of reminded me a bit of Cyberpunk, and I was like, I dig it.
The design is interesting because it's like a little Coruscant-y, but it's also like very like speeding walkways. Like it's like Coruscant mixed with like an airport. Kind of a vibe, and it was very interesting. I mean, it's like if droids designed a city, what it would look like. And
yeah,
it's pretty cool.
This whole chase scene, I just keep seeing more and more of like, this looks like a dude in a motion capture suit. It's not like there was during when he made this corner, he looked kind of weird. It's like the whole thing looks bad. Yeah, the way he chucked this bar, I'm like, I was like, please stop him.
Stop him. Stop this mad lad, please.
And then they do.
Well, again, Mando doesn't have a jetpack. It's got to run on foot, whereas Bo has it. I'm like, oh, how convenient Bo has. I'm like, man, Mando, wouldn't it be great if you had a jetpack right now?
But he wouldn't be able to have his cool cloak on, though.
He wears the cloak and the jetpack at the same time, so that's not an excuse.
Well, then either his cloak would get caught on fire, or you wouldn't be able to see
But he
it.
gets him, and she doesn't. So didn't help her.
Well, he tackles him, and then she shoots him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then automatically...
But
they
she
both
doesn't need a
shoot him.
jetpack for that.
Yeah. But as soon as they stop Yeah, so they stop them. Security droids come out to make a little crime scene. I was like, okay, futuristic way of doing yellow tape. I dig it.
I like it. Very, very astral chain.
It was cute.
So yeah, they're investigating it.
And then the best scene.
And then she finds like this little chip, and I was like, what is this, some sort of calling card? I was like confused about what they were talking about. Yeah, I was like, where'd you find this? You know? Yeah. And then they were like, oh, resistor this. Sounds like a droid bar. I'm like, a what?
Yes.
And so they're like, oh, it's got an address. I'm like, okay.
And this is why I think the writing was just so poor, because it's just catch the guy. All right, here's your next clue. Go to the next location.
Well, to be fair, you know, even in the cop shows, right? Usually when they stop a suspect, they have something on them, right?
But they have red herrings and they have multiple suspects. And
Yeah,
here
it's like
it's
how
just
convenient.
no idea what's happening.
It's just very
But it's
linear. Follow the track.
But it's
Yes.
also probably harder for a droid to like be able to get away something like this because it's always a digital footprint that leads you right to the next thing.
Right. So, I do agree with your point about it being too linear of a detective case. I do agree.
So this droid bar.
Fucking love it.
So they go in and they kind of have a reverse scene of episode 4.
I will say, yeah, they've done episode 4, like they've remade that a few too many times in the cantina scene. I think this is probably the 4th time we've had that redone.
But I think this is probably the most clever version of it.
Yes, 100% agree.
Because I didn't think that scene until he literally made the statement like, I don't think they serve our kind here.
Yeah.
Until he said that, wasn't thinking episode 4 until you made that statement. I'm going, oh, I get it.
I was, but yeah.
You know what would be so funny as like an outtake or something, obviously not the real thing, is if Mando just started doing the robot walking in pretending to be a robot, because you can't see his face anyway, so who be a little robot?
I'm just a commando droid.
Oh, man.
I was a big fan of like the robot rebellion in Solo. I just love little droidy things. I just think they're just the funniest. I've wanted like something short about droids that isn't the droids animated. You know what? I even like that. Who cares? I like droids. The animated 80s show or 90s show.
I watched a little bit of that on Disney Plus not long ago.
Yeah, I just love the design. I love that they're like have their own little synthetic fluid that they're drinking. It's just like great. It's just such a great little set, and it's just quirky and fun and wonderful.
So you guys are praising it. I have a explanation as to why I can accept it, but in general, I'm not a fan because overall, I'm not a huge fan of this whole droid sentience thing going on. Like the whole droid rebellion.
Why would a droid
rights,
want to go
all
to a
this
droid
stuff.
bar, right?
Right. Like, why is there a droid bar unless it's just some kind of, like he explained, it patches their systems and stuff, and they're like programmed to go there like once a week to get upgraded or patched or whatever, just as a non-human intervention way of them, updating. I can understand that if that's the case, but just in general, it just felt weird. Like, why are droids going to a bar? Why are they? It feels like it gives them way more free will than they should have.
You don't think the droids have free will in Star Wars?
No,
No.
absolutely not.
R2 has a mind of his own all the time.
R2 is slightly different, but not really, because all astromechs are known to, if they're not routinely memory wiped, and this is in Legends too, if they're not routinely memory wiped, then they develop personality quirks, and it's equivalent to like a glitch in their system if they don't get a routine memory wipe.
And you can't forget Skippy.
How about
That's not.
So you're okay with our astromechs doing it because it's in Legends?
what about like pit droids?
Pit droids are just programmed to be pit droids
Right,
and repair
but they experience
stuff.
fear.
And punch each other? Like they're programmed to do that?
Well, it would
It could be programmed
a
to
defense
avoid.
mechanism.
Yeah, avoid being damaged.
It's like fight or flight, but for droid programming.
Even though they like physical, like they're programmed to go like and run away.
Like, oh, you stupid.
Like they could just run away without being without hurting.
It could be also an issue with, usually we see them on backwater planets. They're probably not routinely checked up or updated, so they also develop glitches, personality quirks, that kind of stuff. So that could also be a thing.
Protocol droids too, though.
Protocol droids, but C-3PO gets memory wiped once at least.
But he still
we don't know how he is.
But he still has a personality and develops it all on his own.
Yeah.
C-3PO also is more of a exception to the case because Anakin made him.
Well, that and protocol droids are protocol droids, and they're programmed to be more personable and more butlery.
And they do have personality chips that can be put into droids.
That is
so
another
that they
thing.
do project as if they have a personality, but it really is just a programmed personality.
Yep. So there's different things that cause droids to perceive as having personalities, but they don't actually have as much free will as we think they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like most of it's base programming, fight or flight, personality chips, glitches like the astromech personality quirks. But something like this droid bar really doesn't make too much sense.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I must admit, even when I first watched it, I was like, this seems a little odd.
It seems sus.
I did like seeing some of the old like droids that were used in the original Star Tours for guides.
Yeah, the Star Tours tour guides. I always enjoy seeing those.
There's astromech droids in here, as well as I think there's a few protocol droids.
Yep. And the B1s. And they're playing Sabak. They're even playing Sabak.
Hilarious.
Yeah, and then you get stuff like that makes you go, what? Because I mean, like if you go and watch like Clone Wars, you know, they talk about how they program the B1s to be more independent thinkers, but they're still droids, right? They don't act like clones or humans do, right? They act in a funny way.
They probably gave them the ability to take in like data and teach them how to problem solve instead of being like, if XYZ happens, then you must do this.
You know, unless the whole, you know, unless this bar also doubles as a learning center to the droids, like, hey, learn about, you know, this culture that's above, right? Because if you learn about their culture, you can better understand how to serve them, right?
That doesn't make sense though. They could just be programmed with that knowledge.
Like I said, I'm trying to explain it away.
Well, that would be part of the updates within.
You're trying too hard. No, I get it. But yeah, it just for some reason that felt weird. And when I first initially saw it and they're like drinking stuff out of the tubes, I'm like, why is there a droid bar and they're drinking stuff and they're playing stuff? That's just I can't buy it.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I enjoyed Mando a lot in this show in general because of his like hating the droids and just his
yes, I liked it.
Freaking up everything Bo's trying to do. I love it. And I love just how he treats the droids. Not in that sense, just like how he acts around them and he's threatening them and stuff. It's hilarious.
Well, you know, it's not that he's being hateful here. He tells Bo like, you know,
you can't reason
you can't reason with a droid, you know, and he's trying to be practical here because he knows how they work.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I don't want to sit here arguing with a program for an hour.
And
I want to get this done.
It feels kind of weird and out of character for Bo in a sense because she's fought these things in the Clone Wars a lot, so she would know.
But she doesn't suffer from PTSD or something.
Yeah, like she's totally chill with the droids.
But she also recognizes hey, wants to reprogram. They're not the same droid. I think that's her thing.
Yeah, she understands how they work a bit more than he does.
Yeah, but also at the same time she doesn't because she's trying to talk to them.
I also felt like it was a little out of character for Bo to be so calm.
She's pretty calm.
Yeah. Well, we also just been recently watching the Clone Wars episodes with her in them, and she does not seem calm.
She's a little different. She's a little different in those.
She's wizened up, I guess, from her
Clone
Wars youth.
I think so. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a bit. I'm at the point here where the droid at the bar, he's kind of giving a quirk about like, oh yeah, these are like old droids, and this establishment is like our second chance of being useful again, right? So like, he kind of do this kind of weird droid perspective.
Yeah, that just continues on to the weird.
They have a self-preservation. Yeah, for sure.
Right, which again makes it go back to sentience a little bit, because if you're just really a program, does a program really have, that care for, self-preservation?
I like the conversation of what is sentient. I think that's cool.
Yeah. Where I start getting a little like, wait, what kind of thing is this fluid that has a name? Was it
Nepenthe.
Whatever, however you pronounce it, yeah. And they're like, and Amanda's like, what is it? I'm like, good, because I don't know what it is either. They're like, it's a vicious lubricant. I was like, okay, it's a fancy name saying lube, right? And then he gets into this whole thing of like, oh, it also delivers programming refreshing subparticles. And I'm like, what? And then it patches programming as the commands the mainframe change. So it's a weird way of reprogramming droids.
They just let their droids do this on their own free will.
Well, it's just like, this is an odd way to update your droids, but okay, I'll go.
Nanobots.
Right. Well, and then, they start getting information about where this came from. Then I had an absolute laugh because it cuts to a B2 being pulled out of a morgue. And I'm like, what the heck?
Oh, I saw this. I'm like, why? Why are they pulling a droid out of cold storage?
And, this is where I completely lost it, because I was like, okay, you're clearly aping a crime show, but you didn't stop to think and go, does this even make sense? Like,
now, okay, I'm gonna give this one a little bit of a bone here, because initially I'm with you. I was like, what in the world? I laughed. I had no idea why they would keep a droid in cold storage like this. It seemed very gimmicky of, a crime show. But I thought about it on my second viewing a little bit harder, and I was like, okay, let's think about what they're doing to this droid. They're taking fluid out of the droid, and maybe if there's something in the fluid that is decayable or has a lifespan, maybe they would want to put it in a cold storage, like a morgue or something, to keep that fresh so they can test it at whatever time they need it.
Well, yeah, maybe not like cold storage, but a temperature-controlled box, right?
Yeah. So that would make a little bit more sense. Like if you need to draw blood from a body, like hours after it's dead,
Yeah, when she pulled the fluid, I'm like, okay, now we're pulling fluids out of a droid. Like,
well, the droids have hydraulics.
Yeah,
I mean, it would have some sort of fluid.
I know, but it's just like, I was like, man, this feels like up to this. I mean, usually
it is.
I'm just like, oh my gosh, we're now pulling droids out of the arm like it's a freaking body. I'm just like,
it is a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah, so I'm just like, oh my gosh, and like if this was an actual like non-droid, I would have bought this scene a lot better. But the whole time, I'm just laughing at it, at the hilarious of this. I'm like, it's droid. It's not, it's not like it's a human. I'm sure you could have kept it propped up in the corner and nobody would have cared. And of course, Mando asks, like, hey, does this is it still active? Those nanobots? Bzz, the machine that did the analysis goes crazy with the lasers and whatnot. And they have to, of course,
the lasers that barely do anything because it attacks that lady's arm, but just barely goes through her clothing.
Yeah,
that's a classic Star Wars move right there.
Now, so anyway, they get to the next part where they see aberrations in the metal, and this goes back to what you were saying about it's just too convenient, right? Oh, there's an inscription on here. It's a chain code. And I'm like, why on earth is this here?
I have an issue with this. So she's like, this is an illegal transfer. Okay. It's not in the records. Okay, one, you're a scientist. I don't think you normally pay attention to these shipping records. How do you know within like 2 seconds that this shipment wasn't in the records of whatever?
So here's the thing. She is on a computer that's probably connected to a central system. If
She also can read the entire page within the millisecond that it
right,
opens up.
I mean, yeah.
Because Star Wars has really good education system, way better than we do.
So going back to what you're saying, I don't think it's improbable to look up and figure out that this is an illegal, not because it says illegal in the system, but because it's not an approved part in the system, right? So for example, let's say she does this analysis for a living, right? She always looks at droid fluids, right? Well, what if she tells you like, hey, she figures it out because she has like, let's say 10 approved various droid fluids, right? For all the different kinds of droids. And she gets one that's not any of those 10. She's probably then made the correct assumption that, hey, this is a legal one because it's not one of the 10 approved ones that we have. I can tell you that working in aviation, we have approved oils and lubricants that we use on our aircraft. And if we look something up and it's not in the system, we know it's illegal or not necessarily legal, but unapproved for use, because we have a list of approved things that we are allowed to use. So it's not out of reason here to be like, hey, I have a list of approved droid fluids here, and then this one isn't in any of them. So I don't think that's too far of a stretch.
All right, so we find out who it is, and we're going to confront him. I like the Dooku name drop.
I was surprised about this, but it made sense with the connections, right? So he's like, oh, I'm busy. I have to check for anomalies. They're like, oh, we know it's you. You're the one that's causing all this. You weren't malfunctioning. They were programmed. And of course, everyone around them is like, wait, what? And then he threatens like, hey, I've infected them all, and I'll trigger a failsafe that will convert all the droids back to battle droids. And I'm going, whoa, 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 whoa.
Is he bluffing? Is he?
There's
not?
a bit of a problem with that, because he's insinuating that all the battle droids have this backup program ready to be activated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, why isn't that immediately obvious because I feel like that they said something about how only certain droids were having an issue, right? Well, why is it only certain droids if everyone is capable of doing it, right? That at the bar, he said that certain clients were giving a certain batch of blah blah blah, whatever.
Yeah.
Well,
so I mean, it could just be him bluffing.
I think that's either they didn't get the whole script correct, which is more likely. I don't think it's him bluffing. Because the droid at the bar was saying all these malfunctions have come from a certain batch of this fluid. If what he was saying is true, that hey, if I hit this button and they all go back to normal, wouldn't that fluid been distributed to every droid and not just certain a batch? So I think that's kind of contradictory there. And this goes back to them trying to create a trail for them to follow to do this detective work. I don't think it feels very rushed, this script for this episode. I don't think they took the time to really, flush this out.
I mean, it's a detective story made for a younger audience in mind.
5-year-olds?
Yeah. I mean, Mando still feels like it's ready for a younger audience as well.
It goes back and forth for me, where like sometimes it feels like it's meant for kids, but then other times it feels like it's not.
The only one that isn't meant for kids to watch is Andor. Everything else is Star Wars has a child in mind.
I don't know, man. We had Space Vietnam and Clone Wars.
Yeah, I mean, it's still.
There is some really dark things that happen in Star Wars that supposedly are for kids.
There are dark, but like the intention of it was always made for kids.
I guess it depends on what you define kids.
5-year-olds or like 12-year-olds?
I'm just going off of George Lucas quotes.
I know, and when he says that, I think of like 12 and 13-year-olds. I don't think.
Oh well, those are kids to me.
All right, so we figured out who he is. Who's the bad guy? He comes. They bring him in front of Jack Black and Lizzo, and this is where I have an issue because he just seems to do a complete 180.
Yeah, I was like kind of weird about that.
He's like, I'm so sorry. I hope you can forgive me.
Oh, I mean, why wouldn't he? Because they have a chance, obviously, if they go in exile for their punishment. He maybe has a chance to come back if he behaves well.
But the way he was so repentant, it just seemed odd and very sudden, because people that do similar things in like the Clone Wars show react completely differently, where they're like, "Oh, I'm all for my cause, no matter what. I'm sorry, I've hurt you or whatever, but this is the cause, and I'm for the cause." And he just kind of backs down immediately as soon as she starts playing to his heartstrings a little.
Well, yeah, and she just starts blabbing, and I did not like whatever she said. It didn't make any sense to me.
She basically goes like, "Oh, because of like."
You served my family for so long, and he's like, "I'm so sorry."
Well, and she's
Right.
like,
Oh,
"Oh
she
yeah,
would be
he's
betrayed by that.
and
Well, yeah, but he would probably, if he was all for his cause, it wouldn't matter if she feels betrayed, because he already knows he's betraying her.
Yeah. But confronting somebody about that you've maybe known your whole life would be different.
it seems like the quote that seems to like strike with him, quote unquote, is, "Sure, he's made some mistakes in the past, but who here among us has not?"
It also
Like-
feels like it's handled a lot more lightheartedly than it.
Oh,
really
well, yeah. I
should
mean, the
have
whole
been.
episode is
Because-
that way, yeah.
Because freaking Jack Black is being Jack Black, and he's like, "I knew you hated me." You know?
Yeah, because supposedly he was inches away from pushing the button that would have turned everything into battle droids and would have caused a massive amount of slaughter, right? Because I doubt any of these people are capable of defending themselves.
Yeah, he could have turned himself into a terrorist, and he's just like, "I'm so sorry, guys. Please forgive me." All right, can we talk about the last 5 minutes of this episode now? Oh my gosh.
Amazing.
Okay, so
Really, really, really good fight scene.
Yes, I loved this bit, but there is an issue. I love this whole end. Like, they talk in the thing. She's trying to figure out
It's a
what
it's a
she's
rough
gonna
fight.
do.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, because she's like, "I'll figure out what my play is when I get there," and then she gets there and she's just like, "This is my fleet."
I'm like, what? That's your plan? I mean, seriously, you're telling
It's like,
me
it feels like there's only one.
I mean, it feels like she knows she's gonna challenge him at that point.
Yeah, there's like only one outcome here. Like, they're not just gonna be like, "Oh, okay, here's your fleet back."
she could have said something like, "Yeah, it depends on what they're doing there," or something, right?
Yeah.
Like, she could have said like, "Yeah, I'll just see what they're doing and go from there," right? She could have just been like, "I don't have a game plan, but I'm going to read the room," right? Well, maybe she
just didn't want to tell Mando that her plan was to go fight this guy because she was afraid he was going to talk her out of
then
it.
you say, "I have a plan," and he goes, "What is it?" And she goes, "You'll have to wait and see." There are better ways of writing things than just being stupid.
I figured this was where it's gonna go, so I'm just like all for it. I love seeing Mandos just do the fighting and fighting each other. I mean, it's par for the course for them, so that's always fun to
Yeah.
see.
And this one felt harder hitting than previous Mandalorian fights. Well, we haven't.
Quite literally.
Yeah.
Sort of. I mean, I kind of felt more stakes when they were taking back Navarro than this, because one, this Axe Wolves guy, he was basically just a side character in the second season. We don't know much about it.
Yeah.
So
Well, not as much about Snake.
we don't really know too much hardcore, like, I guess you're talking more physicality than emotionally, because
Yeah.
Emotionally it didn't hit
No,
hard.
not
hardly
emotionally.
at
I just
all.
mean like the choreography of it, and like it
Okay,
feels
yeah.
physically heavy and yeah, like
Brutal?
every
Yeah.
hit just seems a lot more brutal.
Gotcha.
The other ones were so lightweight. Like I like the Navarro one, but very lightweight,
Yeah.
very pew pew and
Yeah, I get you.
It-
See, when I hear you say it feels so much harder
Oh.
hitting, I think emotions, because you're
I'm
all
all
about
about that.
emotions.
Well, no, I mean this season is not a hard hitting emotional
yeah.
season, so I don't really look for that
No.
anymore.
I will
Yeah.
say, I feel like Bo is fighting with a little bit more, something from within a little bit more, because
Gusto.
because she's like, like, I'm sick of this. I want this back. I earned it, and I want to take it back. I'm sick
Yeah.
and tired of all this infighting. Just give it back to me and deal with it.
Yeah. So it's a little bit different topic, but it still has something to do with this scene. Is that I heard somewhere, once again, forgot who I watched this edit, that they made the point that Mando and his cult, that's, you know, pretty strict in their beliefs and stuff, their armor is all very individualistic.
Yeah.
And whereas this sect of Mandalorians, it all seems very uniform
Yeah.
and militaristic.
They have variations, but they all wear blue. I mean, you see with variations from each person, right? Because each person's different, but like there seems to be like a dress code, so to speak, for the lack of a better
They're
term.
all like dark blue plates, either some navy gray or black jumpsuit underneath, but all the plates are bluish. They're all the same style.
It's like a little closer to Django-y.
Yeah. They seem to be fully kitted out, whereas the Mandalorians from the covert
Or piecemeal.
are piecemeal. They have different, you know, they have bits and pieces of different armor. Not all of it's Beskar, but these guys, they're full kitted out.
I wonder if it has to deal with where they've been, right? Like, have they just been around since the fall or the purge? You know,
They also clearly have a lot more money because they've become mercenaries recently.
that's true. They probably could have gone around and actually purchased the Beskar to refit and whatnot.
If you were sheltered by the covert the whole time, you'd think they're only the Mandalorians out there.
Yeah.
You know? So, but I just thought that was an interesting tidbit. So back to the fight here. Like we said, really cool.
Really good choreography by the looks of it.
Yeah.
Don't get a lot of that jetpack fighting in there as much between them anyway, like physical jetpack stuff.
I like how she gets knocked off and then he just ropes him and pulls him down off the ship.
Yeah, that was
Her,
was like,
her launch
ah.
off and then into the double kick, like 3 feet kick is like, ooh.
pretty Bo-Katan trademark.
Yeah, but in the first time seeing it there in live action, and it is like, it hit. There was like a good amount of struggle between them to make him seem like still kind of competent. She like struggled a few times, but also still seemed pretty powerful, like confident at the same time. I thought it was a good mix of.
It felt like it was a mixture of jabs and counter punches.
It felt like they were pretty equal.
Right,
Yeah.
I threw you off the ship, but she countered by roping you and pulling you off with him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of times in stuff like this, it'll be like a smash match where it's like one person just destroys the other one for a long time, and then they get a couple good licks in, and then that's it.
Right.
But then this one, no, they kind of kick the crap out of each other.
Yeah, at one point she's around his neck and she's like, "Do you yield?" And he goes, "No," and he blasts off with the jetpack, and I was like, "Oh wow, you're not going down without a fight," you know?
Yeah. I was excited and happy that the fight would go on more, because I was like, oh man, it's already over, and then he's like, no, and throws her off and stuff. It was a good fight.
And man was just there watching, going, yeah, interesting. Yeah.
I'm not usually an action guy, but I got into it quite a bit more. I like the physicalness of it, and I also really love like martial arts fighting type of stuff, and so or hand to hand versus like sword stuff. So I thought it was fun.
And that's what mainly this kind of Mandalorian duel would be. It's less weapons, more physical.
Yeah, because you don't want to kill your opponent, right?
Weapons are a cop out.
Well, depends. It depends on who you're fighting and the challenge and the context. But this, obviously, she's not wanting to kill him because she thinks that too much blood has been shed by Mandalorians against other Mandalorians already. So she's wanting to just, submit her dominance and have them follow her.
So yeah.
So,
I win. You follow me now.
yeah.
All right, the technicality.
But then he's like, frick you, I don't care if you won, I'm not following you because you don't have the Darksaber. And then this is where I have an issue, because it's, once again, we're rushing the plot.
Yeah.
Everyone was hoping and wanting Bo and Din to go at it for the Darksaber. In whatever context it needed. Like, even if it's a similar context for her fighting this guy. Just as their mutual respecting peoples have to do this for the tradition.
Mm-hmm.
But no, they have to do some kind of stupid technicality to have it given to her. But
yeah,
it's funny because all this hoopla about who gets the freaking Darksaber. Doesn't matter. It's none of theirs. It's freaking Luke Skywalker's. You want to know why? Because it went from Pre-Vizsla to Maul. Maul got defeated by Sidious. Maul stole the Darksaber and still had it after he escaped Sidious. Then Sabine stole it from Maul, so she doesn't even technically own it. Then Sabine gives it to Bo. She loses it to Gideon. Gideon loses it to Din. But guess what? All this time, Sidious really owns it. Luke beats Sidious. Or actually, Vader beats Sidious. Luke sort of beats Vader. So it's Luke Skywalker's.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
a funny. That's
We
a
went
funny.
around
If we're being literal, the Darksaber is Luke Skywalker's.
Yeah, I didn't know the history of it, but yeah, that's kind of funny.
Should have handed it over to him in the second season.
Hey, by the way, this is yours.
Yeah,
would you have
exactly.
liked it if that happened?
Luke would have probably not even know what's going on.
Luke would probably just been like, "Oh, neat," and then you know what he would have done? He would have walked away and thrown it over his shoulder.
I would have loved that.
Oh my gosh. I would have too, because in my headcanon, Darksaber doesn't even exist. But I digress. But yeah, in Disney canon, Luke technically has the rights.
So, I also find it interesting that he, the guy that she beats, just starts talking about misguided zealot and all this stuff, and I'm just like, wow, that's kind of like an odd thing to say right in front of him, right? Especially since you don't have your helmet on, and he does. Just saying, you piss him off too much, probably could have shot you. And then he also insults him by saying, like, he doesn't have a single drop of Mandalorian and blood in his veins. I'm like, dude, what is your problem?
Well, that was more important to them.
Yeah, like they're more like pure bloods, you filthy
They're kind of-
mudblood kind of.
Those kind of are. They're like a little bit racist.
Yeah, and the covert is, they just take in anyone willy-nilly, which, honestly, all Mandalorian culture, it's supposed to be family is more than blood.
Yeah.
But these guys, obviously, the Mandalorians are so jacked up in this, so I have to go by what we're shown here. They're more along the lines of pure blood Mandalorian. You're not a pure blood, but if we're going by the Clone Wars, they're not pure bloods. I don't see one over there with blonde hair, blue eyes.
Yeah, I mean, you can make the argument that when the Empire made the Purge, a lot of their knowledge got fragmented, and so
Yeah.
This happens with societies all the time, though.
And that's my point. Is that
Yeah.
because they're fragmented, they've incorrectly filled in the holes, right?
Yeah. This is one of the biggest issues with this season, is that the most interesting and fun things that I want to talk about, at least, is the story plot stuff that only happens at the beginning
And end
and
of
the
the episodes.
end of the episodes. That's what I'm more interested in, and I know more about.
Yeah.
And I can actually have opinions on.
And I know this began as a not serialized show for the most part.
Yeah.
It's definitely like week by week episode. I do find myself wishing more and more that it was a serialized show by this point.
I wouldn't have a problem with that if it was done correctly,
Yeah.
which this show is not.
Yeah.
But it's right. This season is right smack in the middle of episode by episode case and serialized.
Well, it's like
And
the
it's
first
not-
3 were serialized, then they turned into episodes. after
Kind
that.
of. Even those are like a little bit on their own too. Like it's just, yeah. I would, or it's like maybe in 2 episode pairs or something. But yeah, it's fine. It's writing a weird line in between serialized and not serialized.
It's almost like if they maybe originally intended to release the first few episodes together, then they backtracked on that decision. And so that's why they maybe don't flow as well as compared to these, in terms of being like, oh yeah, that was a satisfying episode. But that's my theory. I do wish that maybe they would have picked one or the other, right?
Yeah, I think they should just go full. I mean, my preference at this point would go full serialized, but I just think you need to stick with one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, I like the individual episodes. I like being coming and go, that was fun. I look forward to next week, and not be the whole time going, oh, something happened. I gotta wait till next week. because it's serialized or whatever, right? Because it, was it written that way?
Yeah, my preference would be to release it all at once.
Or we could do what we discussed the other week, where they release arcs, right? Maybe a batch of episodes,
Yeah, like 2-episode arcs.
Yeah, one and
Kind of
2
idea.
as much as possible, like work together and nothing else, and then 3, and then 4, 5 definitely works better.
So my biggest problem, I keep saying that. There's a lot of big problems with that, but
It says Disney on it. That's
thing
the problem,
is-
right?
that's the problem. No, it's where this episode is in the season.
Yeah.
It's
too late.
This goofy. It's way too late. It's this goofy side quest to a side quest, and that's the term I got from Star Wars Theory. He said it's like a side quest to a side quest, and it's way too late in the season.
Yeah.
And it makes the pacing so much worse than it already was.
Yeah.
And I just don't know what they're doing now. The story, the actual story plot points that are at the beginning and end of each episode are rushing it, whereas in the middle it's super slow and there's nothing going on.
Yep.
And even though it is more serialized this season, I do find myself like kind of ranking and thinking of these episodes still as an individual mindset, only because I'm probably not satisfied from a serialized point of view. But like,
Yeah.
because like I mean, this is way different from you guys probably, but like I enjoyed this episode almost more than any of the others. But
Oh my.
but it's not like as a series episode, it's not great. But honestly, like almost none of them have really moved it forward like crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that.
It's like we're only getting little bits and pieces and they're just rushing it. Like if we just got story plot, we'd have maybe enough
make a
footage
2-hour
for one
movie.
episode. For one episode, maybe.
It's like they took a 2-hour movie and broke it up, and it's like turn it into an 8-episode TV show.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
And so
we have
if
to
I-
create random filler to pad the minutes, because I have to agree with you. The beginning, the ends are the points of like the most, like those are the most important parts of the show. Are always the beginning and the end, right? I like a complete story. Like as bad as the story was this episode, in my opinion, we got a complete story-ish, and as we did last week and the week before. Problem is the major highlights of the show are at the end of every episode.
Yeah, and so if I'm not gonna get that, if I'm not gonna get like that sort of satisfaction from those, I'm probably just gonna look for whatever is like the most fun to me to latch onto. And so that's why I latched onto it.
It's almost like you could always just skip to the last 15 minutes every episode. You wouldn't miss anything. But in this case, you could almost cut out the entire episode. Just what if they just landed, got on the tram, and then you literally, with some clever editing, eliminated the entire episode until it's them in the tram on their way over to the pads.
Exactly.
And he goes to her, "So what's your plan?" She goes, "I don't have one yet." That
Yeah.
could have been your whole episode.
Yeah,
I kind
honestly.
of feel like that with most of them.
Yeah.
We both like seasons 2 a lot, you and me.
Oh, I love season 2.
Yeah, and I like season 2, and I think I think about like, well, I didn't feel like I had this issue in season 2, and I was like, yeah, I was actually like hooked on the individual episodes of the story.
Yeah. I even liked the Frog Lady episode where they got trapped in the cave of spiders.
I know.
I need to go back and rewatch season 2.
Forgot about that.
Like,
I like that.
I don't like that episode. I hate spiders.
I do.
Um,
So does Nick. So does Kleina.
So, but the Crate Dragon episode, like the build up to that
Oh, yeah.
fight, I loved every minute of that episode. I can't be saying the same about these episodes in season
I mean,
3.
that might be the best episode of the series, though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's close.
arguably yes.
Yeah.
But it just shows an example of like how like they keep missing on these episodes. Like you just find yourself going, "Can we get to the end?" And that's not something you want out of your television show.
Yeah. It does. This one did feel more like a chore to watch when I watched it first time.
Yeah, I found
And then it felt like a chore to rewatch today.
I'll be honest, at this point in the season, if I wasn't here recording these podcasts with you, I probably would have done other things this week. And I was like, I'll get to it when I get to it. But because of this, I was like, no, I have to watch it. And it felt like such a chore to watch this one. I was like, oh my god.
That's so funny. Yeah, because I just had so much more fun with it than the last ones, and part of it has to do with where I was mentally at that point of working so much.
It is probably a mental thing because I need to stop spoiling myself because I usually get on YouTube and somebody will already have like a thumbnail and a review thing up on my subscriptions about it. I'm like, gosh, dang it. So I should probably just stop because I did go in knowing people were saying it was bad.
Yeah, don't do that.
But I didn't know why.
Yes, you need to stop doing that. And then also you need to stop texting me your opinion before I watch it so I can have my own personal
But that didn't really affect my overall reaction when I finished the episode because I was like, yeah, this was not good. And the next time I watched it, it just solidified.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I want to watch this episode again, to be honest.
No, I probably won't. I honestly, I haven't really watched many, but
that cuts it out. That'd be great.
Dude, somebody should make a fan edit this season. I'll watch it.
But going back to the whole like, oh well, I got imprisoned by this creature and she saved me, and therefore she gets the Darksaber. I kind of felt myself sitting there and going, okay, well that just happened. Does this mean that Mando's just been sitting on this fact the whole time and he's just going, I'm going to give it to her, but I'm just waiting for the right moment?
I mean, yeah.
He also wouldn't accept it the first time he kind of said that, so he could just be waiting for the moment when he thinks she's actually going to take it.
Well, last time he just tried to give it to her, and she said, no, I can't do that for reasons. But she saved him a few episodes back, and has just been like holding on to it still until now, and then he's just like, nah, it's technically yours.
I think
okay.
I don't think the timing is that weird, but the technicality is kind of a funny way to handle it.
Yeah, and to me this screams Mando in the way that he doesn't want to fight. Like, I get the sense that Mando's not really one of those people that wants to get in these kind of fights, right? He will fight if he has to, but he's not the guy that goes seeking out trouble in the way that
there is an alternate way in which this is much more complex, and he has to fight her, though not like a better way. I think that there is.
But ever since he got the Darksaber, he's had no care for it.
Yeah,
he's like, I yield, you take it. And then Moff Gideon's like, oh, that's not good enough story, that will never fly with the Mandalorians or whatever, blah blah blah. And he's just like, I don't want it though. Like, I would be like, if I was back in last episode of season 2 and I was told, hey, you have to have it, and so wants it, and I didn't want it, I would have done what Luke Skywalker did and just turned around, walked out, and threw it over my shoulder.
Yeah.
Oh no, I lost it.
Oh my, it's 18.
What are you gonna do? You gonna not take it and just let it sit on that ship? I don't think you will.
All right, let's get to wrapping up here. Let's do a round of final thoughts, and then we'll rate the episode. So let's go with final thoughts on Captain first.
Oh, you make me go first.
Might as well get you out of the way.
I like the planet. I like the artisticness. I love the dome. I liked the whole atmosphere outside of the dome. Like, I loved seeing the fields and all the water and all that. So I really was digging the aesthetic. And to be honest, throughout the entire episode, I really did enjoy the aesthetic. There was not anything that made me go, oh, this seems out of place. So I do give thumbs up for that. I like the idea of a CSI, NCIS, Hawaii Five-0, whatever you want to call it, cop show investigation. I really, when they first were starting moving towards that, I was like, ooh, this is gonna be fun. And then we got to the whole droid part with the fluids and all the nanobots and all that stuff, and then the cold storage, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this just, I felt like you copy and pasted without thinking, and then it just went off the rails at that point. And then we get to the whole like Mendo coming up to his part and going, "Hey, I found a clever way to give you the Darksaber after waiting several days." Yeah, it just feels like a major mess. And what I said earlier still stands. With clever editing, you could cut out most of this episode. You wouldn't miss anything really relevant as of right now of recording. We don't know if Jack Black and What's Her Face comes back to make any kind of formal declaration, and that's important. But as of right now, they don't seem all that important to the story because she kind of seems to deny it. As for the rating, I didn't like this episode. I'm not gonna lie. And there's things I did like, and I liked the ideas that they tried. I think I might give this a 5. I think this is average television, but I feel like that average number is misleading because the story elements, like I feel like the NCIS stories, for example, I've watched that show the most. I feel like their stories are much more thought-provoking. When I watch those shows, I'm trying to figure out the whole thing the whole way. And this show just did not have anything like that. It was too much of, I found the next clue and it tells me the next location I should go. There is no investigative work. It's, happy day, here's your next quest item. So at that point, it's definitely weaker than your average television show, but the aesthetics are definitely above your average television show. And so I think that for that reason, it cancels it out and gives it a 5.
All right, cool. Tykoth.
Yeah, standing by my original statement, it's like not good, but it is one of my more enjoyed episodes of it, just because it reminds me more of the original trilogy. It reminds me of like just the corniest dialogue you've ever heard in a fun way for me. I don't mind the Jack Black and Lizzo thing. I think it's kind of fun because it was so unexpected. I think it is like, it's what I was talking about before, where it's not this really cohesive whole season. So I'm really latching on to individual moments than I am as far as an entire overarching story, which I don't know what that says about the thing as a whole, but because I latched onto this so much, yeah, I guess it is a disappointing season so far, but yeah, had such a great time with it because of that. And I think the ranking it is super weird because, yeah, like as like enjoyment, I'd give it just like an 8 or something, like just pure enjoyment, fun time. But as like a technical aspect, I'd probably do like a 6 to a 6.5, I'd say.
All right, fair average scores from Tykoth. That's awesome. Okay.
You mean it's not a 9?
I didn't. Hey, in my little spin-off episode, I did not give either of those a 9.
Yeah. No, I told him that he gave him 7s and 7.5, so I'm very proud of him. Anyway.
And Persona
right.
from Ingmar Bergman in 1960 is a 25 out of 10.
All right, Kleina.
So, oh man.
Don't be persuaded by anyone. Just
I
what's
know.
your thoughts? And...
So it's hard because when I think about this episode, I think, yes, it feels more like a Mandalorian episode than some of the other episodes we've had, i.e. episode 3. But when I think about which episodes I would want to rewatch, I'd rather rewatch the Pershing episode than this episode.
Interesting.
Now, I really love like all the droids. I like seeing all the cute droids. I'm a fan of droids, but that couldn't fix all the other things that I wasn't a huge fan of in this episode. So I'd probably give it like a 4 or a 5 because like it's definitely not a good episode.
Yeah.
But it's also not like worse than the Pershing episode because it's bad but in a different way.
Right, and I struggled the same way with you when it came to the number, and that's why I just ended up at a 5.
That's why I gave 2 rankings.
I was thinking 4 like you were.
Yeah, this one's rough. This one's really rough. So my final thoughts, I think it was just poorly executed. Concept was cool, but poorly executed. The only part of the episode I really enjoyed was the final fight scene between Axe and Bo. And I think they completely jumped the shark with Jack Black and Lizzo. my rating is going to be very low. This season is probably the worst rated episode out of all of them. I'm going to give it a 4. If it wasn't for the fight scene at the end, I'd probably give it a 3.
Oh wow.
So if there was, and I should give it a 3 just because of the stupid technicality of how she gets Darksaber, but I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna, because whatever happens to Darksaber doesn't even. I don't even care about it. So it's a 4. 4 for me.
Starting to wish I'd give it a 4 because I was thinking of 4.
So yeah, guys. Thanks if you guys are stuck with us this long. Thanks for watching. Thanks for enjoying. Thanks for disagreeing, but man, this was a rough episode, rough week for Star Wars. So
Tell me.
Where do you guys think we're gonna go from here?
Oh, we better not get into that.
let's do maybe 5 sentences or less. Where's it going from here?
I have no idea. Are they gonna go take these people and go meet up with the other Mandos and then make a plan to like? Are they gonna stay on that planet? Are they all gonna go back to Mandalore, kill all the?
I think they're gonna go back to Mandalore
and rebuild.
they're gonna go back to Mandalore and create a sort of like Jango Fett clone. They're gonna bring Jango Fett back. They're gonna reanimate the body.
I think we still have the rumors that Pax Rao is coming. Not Pax Rao. That's some other character. Fen Rao is going to show up. We've got rumor / confirmation that Boba Fett might show up. Yeah. I'm thinking at some point they might go and find Boba Fett, and maybe Fen Rao shows up somewhere. But they got to cover a lot of ground in this last 2 episodes. But at the same time, what are they doing? Are we going to get the retake of Mandalore this season? Are we not?
We also have to figure out what's happening with Moff Gideon too.
Yeah, and I honestly don't care.
It feels like Moff Gideon is maybe being trained up for next season. Yeah.
Like, it could be something like they're gonna go back to the cult people and... Well, no, because they don't even know about Moff Gideon yet. I don't know.
I think that's the big thing is we just don't know where it's going at all.
I think there's still room for them finding other Mandalorians like Boba Fett and Fen Rao. Maybe Sabine. I doubt it though, because she's in the Ahsoka show, and she seems to be where she was left off in Rebels. So I doubt she's gonna show up.
That show looks like it starts right where Rebels ends.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about that, to be honest.
Yeah,
I don't know where else.
That can be we can do a whole nother recording on our reaction to that trailer.
Well, I'm worried. I'm honestly worried at this point because we took a whole episode to get these Mandalorians. I highly doubt that's going to be enough Mandalorians to take a whole planet back.
No. Not even with this fleet.
Yeah, I'm super scared that this season is going to end with 1 episode left on them just magically taking Mandalore back, and then there's going to be a whole nother episode with Moff Gideon. That is my worst fear right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think the season should be... I honestly don't know where we're going to go. I was hoping that the last 3 episodes were going to be focusing on Moff Gideon and like their potential Mandalorian involvement. And then season 4 would have been a whole season of like getting ready to retake Mandalore. Now I'm worried that retaking Mandalore might be like compressed down into an episode.
Yeah.
You remember when we thought he would go to the mines of Mandalore as like maybe the finale?
Right.
Yeah.
If this season ends with them retaking Mandalore, the pacing has been just absolutely nuked beyond belief. Like that means these writers have no sense of pacing because
I mean, to be fair, what are they taking it back from? There's no one there.
The native creatures.
Yeah, there's like maybe some scavengers and those weird
Grievous like droids.
native
yeah,
guys.
but like
Exterminate and rebuild, to be honest.
but at the same time, how do you hold a planet?
Take it back from the mythosaur.
Right, because like
I don't even know.
how do you defend a planet with 20 people?
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to do that. It's not going to happen.
Nobody's really attacking it though.
Yeah, nobody's trying to take it besides them.
Well, yeah, but that's because everyone thinks it's a toxic pool, right?
Well, there's not really resources there either, other than
Beskar, duh. The most sought after material to the point that the traitors in episode 2 were willing to commit murder on Mando by drowning him so they could take his armor. So
Yeah.
we know it's highly, highly valued to the point that your average Joe will commit murder if that means he can get his hands on Beskar. So, yeah, I'm a bit worried. I mean, sure, yes, we thought it was going to be the end of the season when he got to the mines. In retrospect, did he need a whole season? Okay, maybe not. But that said, it's one thing to go to Mandalore, dunk yourself in the water, and be redeemed. That's a whole nother to prep an invasion force to not only retake a planet, but then to hold it. And especially a planet that has, major issues from the bombings, which we discussed. You can't make a signal coming in and out of that planet. So, I'm worried. I'm honestly worried.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll find out in the next 2 weeks. So I hope everyone has enjoyed this very long, hopefully not too long discussion, and that you'll return with us next week for episode 7, the penultimate episode. So we'll catch you there. Thanks for joining us, and like and subscribe. I haven't really said that much, but go ahead and do that. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye. But you know what this scene does give us?
Nightingale.
Grogu, the Mandalorian Jedi Knight.
God.
I know. I was laughing when this was happening. I was like, oh my gosh, they're knighting Grogu for what? He didn't do anything.
He was cute. He helped her win her lawn darts game.
He deserves it. You shut up.
You shut your mouth when you talk to me.
No, I will not.
It makes no sense.
He deserves it.
He didn't do a single heroic act while they were there.
God, did you look at him?
He was heroic in helping her cheat at the lawn darts game.
Oh God.
Croquet, whatever.
Croquet, which was awesome. God, that's awesome.
Oh,
Space croquet is amazing.